And for more on this, I am joined by Jamal Abdi, Policy Director of the National Iranian American Council. Nice to have you on the show again, Jamal. So I want to ask you how much influence you think Israel has on U.S. foreign policy.
Well, Bibi Netanyahu in particular has exercised an enormous influence on the president's ability to conduct foreign policy, has really put a lot of pressure on him and has limited his ability to basically live out a lot of the promises that Obama made on the campaign trail, whether it was to engage in diplomacy with Iran, to prevent war with Iran. Anything that this president has tried to do, he's been hit hard by basically Netanyahu's allies in Congress and in the right-wing establishment.
So now Israel is going as far as to say that if and when they launch an attack on Iran, that they're only going to give the U.S. 12 hours notice. So not too much notice there. With this statement, does this suggest that war with Iran is even closer than expected?
I think we need to be careful that, when Israel is engaging in this sort of public rhetoric, is maybe not when we need to be as concerned as when they go silent. You don't necessarily want to project that you're going to engage in these strikes right before you do them, because it makes it less likely that they're going to have any degree of success. So I think a lot of this is about putting more of that pressure on the president, really feeding his opponents a lot of the tools they need to say, hey, this president is not standing with Israel. They have this spat over Iran. And I would just point out that, Obama has done more than any of his predecessors to put the types of sanctions that, Bibi Netanyahu claims to want in place against Iran in place. He has had more success than any of his predecessors.
But apparently that doesn't seem to be enough for Israel.
Well, really what I think is the problem here is that Obama has pressured Israel on other areas. On the Palestinian issue, Obama, at least initially, signaled that he was actually going to be a little bit more willing to press the Israelis to make some concessions. That quickly dissipated. The president suffered some big election losses that put his reelection sort of in question, so he's been a lot more conservative in those positions, as well as in his position, which really upset some of the establishment in Israel regarding diplomacy with Iran. He's really still paying the price for saying on the campaign trail, I will talk with the Iranians directly.
Now, with the Israeli Prime Minister making this claim or this threat that the U.S. is only going to get 12 hours notice, does that kind of show that maybe the relationship between the two countries isn't as close as maybe thought?
I think that it's probably, I think what the president wants to do is say, as he has said, we are in lockstep with Israel. I don't want this to be a liability for my reelection. And I think that Netanyahu and his supporters, and like I said, particularly in the right-wing establishment that would like to see this president taken out, there's sort of this alliance that's being formed on the basis of this president isn't as close to Israel as his predecessors have been. Not because of any policies, but because of this perception that has been created and the pressure that he's put in place.
And so now, if Israel does decide to attack, how do you think the U.S. will respond?
I think that the U.S. probably won't have a lot of options. I think that very quickly, depending on what happens, the U.S. could be drawn into an escalation that results from that. We don't know how the Iranians would respond. There's a possibility that they would respond in Iraq or in the Persian Gulf, in areas where the U.S. is very vulnerable. And to think that, our closest ally in the Middle East would give us only 12 hours notice, if that, and put us in such a dangerous position, put American diplomats, American troops in danger, is very, it's unconscionable. And I think that folks that advocate for these strikes by Israel understand that Israel can't take out Iran's nuclear capability. They can maybe delay it by a year, maybe 2 years, but what that is going to create is this long-term military confrontation, and the U.S. is going to be a part of it.
And some of the reports are saying the motive behind Israel saying that they're only going to give us this small amount of time is that they're worried that President Obama is going to try to prevent an attack on Iran. And why would it be in the U.S.'s interest to prevent an attack? I mean, especially when it comes to oil prices.
Yeah, a war with Iran would make the last 10 years of military adventurism look like a cakewalk in comparison. It would drive oil prices up, you know, who knows, $150, $200, $250 a barrel, send shockwaves through our economy, send shockwaves through the European economy. And like I said, this would be a long-term confrontation that we would really have a difficult time digging ourselves out of. A lot of people say that, you know, you can't actually shut down Iran's nuclear capability without a full-scale military occupation. And that's going to be, you know, U.S. troops involved in that. We've all seen what the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have done to the economy and to the stature of the United States in terms of international prestige and power. So I think that we would see that on an even larger scale. And that's why the president has indicated that he's not in favor of premature military operations against Iran. I would say that we're pretty far away from the point in time where we would have to make a decision to do that. But the Israelis are indicating that their threshold is lower than the Americans.
Very interesting, Jamal. Pleasure to have you on the show as always. That was Jamal Abdi, Policy Director for the National Iranian American Council.